Hello everybody and welcome to VFR. Today we are back in the Junkers Ju-52, modern spec this time, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be taking it out for a test flight, putting it through its paces, examining how the model behaves when we're flying it around, doing several different maneuvers, and just generally kind of exploring what this model brings to the table. We are out here at Bicycle Lake, the official top secret VFR test training facility, KBYS. And we're all lined up on the runway here, and we're going to be taking off straight out to start our testing. Basically, we're going to start out by doing a couple of circuits. We're going to do one just over the field, not come in for a landing. And then we're going to do a second circuit to do a touch and go. After we do the touch and go, we're going to climb out, and we're going to climb up to test altitude. Once we get up to test altitude, we will begin the rest of the testing portion, which we'll do be going as fast as we can. We'll be looking at how the stall performance is. We'll be doing some engine out procedures and just turning around and flying over the desert. Well, after that, we'll come on back, do a final landing here, and then we'll debrief. Okay, so we're here in the cockpit, and we are ready to go. All we're going to do is hold on the brakes, advance the throttles, and away we go. Going to release the brakes now. Now, one difference from the last flight I did, is we're loaded with about a person in every seat. So we are bringing a little bit more weight on board. We're keeping 50% fuel. And I think because of this hill, we're going to do a left-hand circuit. Now again, the Junkers, the Ju-52 really floats off the runway. That seems to be my impression of it. Even more heavily loaded. It does have it's not quite as stable maybe as the DC-6, but it is still very stable. It just kind of floats around a little bit. And it's not unpleasant. So once we cross the runway, we are going to turn left. And turn around to come in. Now, this airplane also, it climbs pretty well with its 3 engines, and as long as you're leaning out the mixture as you climb, you should get pretty good climb performance. And landings are a little bit tricky, but as long as you keep it planted and let it run out, don't try and pull back up on the stick too much, otherwise you will take back off. As long as you get that, you'll be fine, and it's not it doesn't take a lot of stopping room once it gets slowed down. Even if you do pop off the runway, it is not the end of the world because, again, you're kind of floating around. So our only concern here, a little bit of terrain off our nose, but we will be able to clear it pretty easily. Now in front of us, the town of Fort Irwin. In general, this is an army base in real life, repurposed for our purposes. These runways aren't paved in real life. Generally used for helicopter ops. And if you're intimidated by the 1939 spec Ju-52, the modern cockpit it's still a little funky, but it's got a much more user-friendly layout. Let's say your airspeed, you have knots and kilometers per hour. You have some more updated dials. It really does help. It's a lot more than I thought. I thought they were just going to throw a Garmin in here, and that was going to be all you got. But no, it's actually quite a different model, which is refreshing. Alright, so we're over the city. We've got the range about. We're going to just gently come around. I'm going to come back on the power and start bringing in the flaps. And we'll shoot for a touch and go. And the VFR test facility runway is set up for much larger, much faster airplanes than this, so we should have plenty of room. But we're going to aim for the touchdown markers, the touchdown zone. About halfway, if we're not pulling back off, we'll have to call it. So I'm going to give the rest of the flaps. And come off the power some more. This is probably a bit steep, but better safe than sorry with the terrain. And we do a bit of a crosswind, so I'm giving it some right rudder. Looks like the wind has picked up somewhat. And we're over the apron. I'm just going to pull back on the power. Keep it straight. Little bouncy. We're going to go back full power. Flaps up. So it is not a very dramatic touch and go, because really it floats off the runway real quick. It's actually it's a really neat thing. All right, so we're going to climb on up. We're going to climb to probably about... We're going to shoot for about 12,000 feet. We'll have to lean out the mixture a little bit, but that'll give us the space to do our maneuvers. So we're going to just keep our runway heading, climb on out, and I'll catch back up with you when we're starting the test procedure. Alright, so here we are. We're up at test altitude, 12,000 feet. Took a little bit of cajoling to get up there, but slow and steady. We're here, and the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to be putting our foot down. Just try and maintain level flight. And see what kind of speed we can get up to. Speed's already coming back quite a bit. Yeah, this is not a particularly fast airplane. You can see here we're doing 175 kilometers per hour, which is like 90 knots. We were pushing 140 yesterday over the Alps, but yeah, it is not a speed demon, despite the 3 engines. But it does trim fairly nicely for a sim aircraft. And now we're getting a little life. Alright, so we're up to 190 kilometers per hour. Now our next stage is going to be doing some turning. We're going to see how well we can turn this thing pretty extremely. So we practiced more of a typical circuit pattern turns earlier. Now we're going to really push it. So rolling to our left first, we're going to do 90 to the left. And it really takes quite a bit of cajoling. What's this at 3.5, it looks like. Or 1.5. I'm just going to mark my course line. And we'll bring it back to the right. I mean, but you can get it around pretty aggressively. Again, it almost feels very light. So it doesn't... It takes some nudging to get it to go that direction. But once you get it going, you can whip it around pretty fast. We're going to do 180 now to the left. See, I'm giving it a lot of control input, and it just kind of lags. But once it gets in there... And we're going to just roll out. And we did lose a bit of altitude there, so that's something to watch out for. So now I just want to play with the controls a little bit to test out some of the responsiveness. The first one we're going to do is a couple 2-1-1s. We're going to give 2 seconds of one input, then 1 second of another, 1 second of another. So we're going to first do pitch. I'm going to do 2... And the nose just wants to keep coming over, so that makes some sense. We're getting a little slow, let it recover. But just kind of like when you're handling it, it feels like it lags behind your input a little bit. Which is interesting. Almost, I don't know, it like a sailplane or something. Alright, we're back up to 175 kilometers an hour. We're going to do it and roll. 2, 1. You see we got a little bit of oscillation, but it does kind of nicely come back in. Again, can't speak for how realistic this is to a Ju-52. I have no idea. But it is interesting, at least from a sim perspective. Last one we're going to do is rudder. 1, 2. So that behaves pretty well. It doesn't knock you out too bad. That was 2 seconds of right rudder and then 1 of left each. Now the last one we're going to do just a couple of combos. We're going to do pitch, then roll. 2, roll, roll. And those are going to come down because we are pretty slow. So we're almost nearing a stall, and that's a little premature. So I'm going to let the nose come down, and we'll pick up some speed again. The last one we'll do 1 and roll and some yaw. 2. So does this tell us anything? Not particularly. I mean, there are certainly equations and data you can collect to turn this into meaningful information, but that's really not what we're doing here for our internet flight simulator content. So we're going to turn around and just come back up the valley now. And we're going to get into the stall portion of the event. I think first we're going to do a power off stall configured for cruise, and then we'll probably do 1 configured for landing. Now, stall recovery procedure, we're just going to... We'll be off the power for this first one. We'll come back on it. We'll let the nose drop, regain some airspeed. Once we regain nose authority, we'll bring the power back up. And we will make sure that we're starting this above 10,000 feet. So we're at 11,000, that's okay. Alright, so I'm going to begin bringing the nose up and the power down. And we should bleed speed pretty easily. And there it goes. No stall horn or anything. Nose is coming over. We're getting power back. So as you might expect for a plane that maybe floats off the runway and likes to float on landing, it's not terribly dramatic. Again, it just kind of hangs. Now I'm going to bring the speed down below 130 kilometers per hour, and we're going to give it full flaps. We'll keep the power up. And we'll do this when power on in the landing configuration. We're at 10,000 feet, should be fine. I'm just going to bring the nose back. And we're going over. So that's more severe going down, but you're going to pick up airspeed pretty quickly. Coming back. So we'll bring the flaps up. And there's there's our home over there across the mountain. We'll just come on back. And I'm going to give it a bit of power before we begin the last portion. Which is going to be the spin. So this is probably the least predictable. I haven't tried this before. So we're going to want to regain some altitude. And find a nice flat spot below us. And the other thing that we probably should have done for the stalls, but we're definitely going to do here for the spins, is we're going to richen up the mixture. We're going to bring the mixtures back to rich. And right now we're climbing out about 1,000 feet per minute. That's pretty good. In the modern version, is kind of nice if you're imperial focused like I am. You get your altimeter in feet and your vertical speed in feet instead of meters, which just helps for all the charts and stuff, which are usually, at least in the US, in feet. Now, to induce our spin, we're going to do power off. We're going to basically do a stall, and then I'm going to kick in some right rudder and hold it until we lose control. At that point, we'll probably need left rudder to counteract the spin and pull out like we are pulling out of the stall. I don't know what to expect, because the stall performance is pretty tame. It just kind of floats and tips over. So I'm not sure what to expect here. We'll see if we can even make it spin. Alright, so we're going to come around, and we're going to come around for this nice valley here. We're going to maintain our climb. We're climbing through 11,600. Alright, we're coming up on 12,000 feet. So we're going to come on down, level out, And we're shooting for a reasonable cruise speed, so anything over 175 kilometers per hour. And we've got it. So we're going to come back off the power. Get into our stall. When we can really go quite vertical. And now I'm just going to hold the rudder in. So no cigar there, we'll give it one more try. As you might expect, it's a little bit stately, floaty. The airframe's not being bullied by the rudder. Alright, so we're going to reset, level off. And we're coming back in the power. Leaning out, I'm going to give the rudder earlier in this time and see if that does anything for us. And does not appear to, no. I haven't even put the power back on, and we're leveling out, so I wouldn't stress too much about the stalls here. And really not unexpected based on its landing performance, based on how it feels to take off, and just the general characteristics, kind of light and almost feathery. It has fairly tame stall characteristics. Alright, last thing is going to be an engine out. We're not really looking for anything particular here. Really, I just want to see how it flies with one of its engines out. And we're going to take off one of the wings just because that'll be a little bit more interesting. We'll cut the mixture. Or C. So we definitely have a drop in power on the right side. But it's not really, I don't think it's hurting too much. Interesting. Now I can't get it in the middle position. And that engine's back up in RPMs. Interesting. So I don't think we're too successful in shutting it off, but we did reduce power a little bit. I would imagine it gets a lot more sluggish without one of the engines. Interesting. Alright, so that's going to wrap up this flight test portion of the flight test. We're going to head on back to Icicle Lake, land it up, pack it up, and then we'll talk through how this airplane feels to fly. Alright, so we are trundling along here, bearing down on the runway. And I'm just reducing the power. The nice / maybe not nice thing about going so slowly is that you got lots of time to think about what you're actually going to do. So we've got one knock of flaps in. We're going to go the next two. Not really any time we're good to on speed. So I'm going to add another level of flaps. Just to help start bringing us down more. And again, we got plenty of runway. And the key is just going to be make sure we're not pulling back too hard on the stick as we roll down the runway. Not that it's a terrible little pop and float maneuver that you can do, but it is slightly embarrassing to the internets. I'll give it the last knock of flaps. And we're even getting a little slow. I mean, we're flying at, what, 100 kilometers an hour, which is, we're really like at 60 knots right now. So it is quite slow. It's almost like a kite. It's just gonna fly on off. And just catch that windsock. Yep, we still got a pretty nasty crosswind coming in. Could use the dirt runway, really. But we're in no rush. And I do have to give it quite a bit of right rudder in this situation. There's the power. And there's the rear wheel. And back pressure and brakes. It is fun. It's just different. It's not like anything else I've really flown. Even the little bush planes aren't quite so temperamental. Very interesting. Well, we're going to taxi on back to the hangar, and we'll go ahead and debrief. Alright, so we're back here at Bicycle Lake, and that is good fun. It is really, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It is almost like a kite, or like a... And I haven't flown too many sim gliders, but it almost feels like a glider, like you have that lazy response, which just seems crazy to say staring at three big engines, but it does kind of have a laziness, a lag to it. It's not fighter jet responsive. I mean, it's not even DC-6 responsive or airliner responsive. So it does have that, but it's very stable, and it just takes off so fast. It gets in the air so fast. I mean, and not even so fast. It gets in the air so slow. And that's kind of the big thing that strikes me. It's just that low speed takeoff. It's just nuts. And I mean, you've seen it. You can see it in videos too of airplanes like this. I mean, it seems fairly accurate. So that's very interesting. Very stable and stall, but you can really whip it around when you pull. You feel like you're pulling it when you're turning it, but once you get it pulled, you can turn it pretty fast, and it'll do a tight turn in the air. So it's just a very interesting airplane. It's a lot more interesting in terms of its flight characteristics than I really thought. I thought we were going to get a smaller DC-6, really, but I think it does have something very unique to offer. It's just a very, very unique kind of flight experience. That low speed handling and really floating, and also the fact that it's a tail dragger, which you just don't get on modern airliners or modern passenger airplanes, really. So It has a lot. It has a lot of unique little things, and it's just a neat airplane to sink your teeth into. So that's pretty much it. That's it for our flight test today here on VFR. If you have any questions, comments, anything you missed, any suggestions for maneuvers you'd like to see how we could test this airplane, or any other airplanes that you want to see us take out on the flight test range and explore how it flies, drop that in the comment section below. As always, like, comment, and subscribe for any for more content like this. And as always, this has been VFR. Take it easy, everybody.